She walked past them like a ghost they didn't want to see. They didn't shout at her. Whispers were sharper. Isn't she the one who froze and got her squad killed? Their words drifted through Fort Dalton like poison, slow but deadly. Sergeant Evelyn Shaw didn't flinch. She didn't argue, because when your name's already been buried, silence becomes the only armor that fits. But what none of them knew was that the mark hidden beneath her sleeve wasn't some casual tattoo. It was a warning. Someone somewhere was finally listening. Asterisk, asterisk, she moved through the armory like routine, quiet, focused, unnoticed. Fort Dalton wasn't a place for people like her anymore. Isn't that the one who panicked during recon? Someone muttered just loud enough to be heard. I wouldn't trust her with my canteen, let alone my 6. The gossip wasn't new. It floated through the halls like dust, settling into every corner. Evelyn didn't react. At 29, she carried herself like someone older, someone who had buried more than just soldiers. She didn't fight the stares. She didn't speak. Time had turned silence into her weapon. She kept her shoulders square and her eyes down. The base was tucked away in the Nevada desert. Wind whipped through the heat like a reminder. Nothing moved here without notice. People noticed her, how she ate alone, how she stayed quiet during off-duty hours, how she cleaned and stacked gear with perfect precision but never offered advice. No stories, no jokes. She's been demoted twice, Private Brower said during morning lineup. My cousin in Delta said she lost 3 men in Syria. Froze up. Still here, though, someone else added. Yes, command soft. They didn't say it to hurt her. That would have meant they cared. It was worse casual cruelty. The kind that people stopped questioning because they'd heard it so often. She let it pass. Like always, the squad was outside early, the heat already crawling under their collars. The schedule said advanced endurance drills, but for Evelyn, the goal was always the same: survive the day. She cleared walls, ran ropes, hit every mark. Not perfect. Just exact. No one clapped. A few looked away. Corporal Hales smirked. As she neared the last obstacle, "Need help, Sergeant?" he called. "Don't want you freezing mid-climb." A few soldiers chuckled. Not with hate, just with indifference. The kind that comes when someone's already been erased from the group. Evelyn didn't reply. She finished the course, turned away, and walked back to the storage shed. Inside, the air was cooler, stale, but still. That's what she preferred. Her hands moved with habit, checking inventory, restacking crates, logging supplies down to the last cereal bar. Not because anyone cared, because it mattered to her. No one bothered her here. No one noticed her until that day. She peeled off her jacket to inspect a torn strap on her vest. "What's that on your arm?" a voice asked behind her. Private Jason Truday leaned closer. "Tattoo," he asked. She instinctively pulled the sleeve down, but not quick enough. For a second, the design had shown dark, clean lines. Not artistic, structured, something like a phoenix, but sharper. Mechanical. Purposeful. Trute raised his phone and snapped a picture. She didn't stop him. Maybe she should have, but the energy to care was gone. By lunchtime, the image was everywhere. Group chats, inbox threads, even some command logs. No caption, just questions. "What kind of bird is that?" someone asked. "In the mess hall, looks like drone tech, not ink," another muttered. Lieutenant James Kessler paused when he saw the image. He was young, sharp, recently promoted, still unsure enough to think twice before judging. "That's some tattoo, Sergeant," he said casually later that afternoon. "Got a story behind it?" She met his eyes for a moment, her voice flat. "Something like that, sir," nodded and walked on. But her words stayed with him. That night, Evelyn returned to her bunk. Someone had left half-open water bottles near the door, leaking into the floor. She didn't say a word, just cleaned up the mess and lay down. Nobody said her name anymore. Unless they were mocking it, she wasn't a person. She was a warning label in boots. Don't be like Shaw. The next morning came heavy with heat. Drills started before sunrise. Evelyn moved through them like a shadow, quiet, clean, invisible. Lieutenant Kessler watched from a distance. Something didn't sit right. She moved too well, too sharp, too clean. No one that good got sent to inventory, not without a reason later. That day, she was assigned to work with 2 new privates, crate relabeling. One of them accidentally dropped a full box. Grease splashed across her fatigues. "Oops," he said, grinning, phone already in hand. Didn't freeze that time. She didn't say a thing. She got the mopping cleaned. That evening, Kessler saw the video, the edits, the captions. Hashtags. He stared at the screen. Then he clicked save and shut it off. His jaw clenched. His mind didn't. Asterisk. Asterisk. It wasn't the grease. It wasn't the laughs. It was the silence that followed, the kind that made her feel less than visible, less than human. But Evelyn didn't flinch. She didn't explain herself. Because the story printed on her record wasn't the truth. The real story lived in a hidden file, in a buried mission, and in the ink on her arm. And for the first time in months, that story had started to whisper back. Asterisk later that night. While the others slept, Evelyn returned to the warehouse, not to finish chores, to breathe. The silence there was different. Clean. Honest. She moved to the top shelf and pulled down a stack of old maps marked for disposal. Most were faded layouts of shutdown bases, training zones long abandoned, but one made her stop. It had those same shapes, same harsh lines etched into her forearm. The tattoo. Only this wasn't art. These were map markers, topographic, precise. She stared at it, then slowly reached for her phone. The message was short, sent to a number she hadn't used in over a year. They still don't recognize the emblem. How long do I wait? The reply came quickly. Patience. Truth builds momentum. She didn't answer. Just sat there in the dark holding the map, knowing this wasn't random. That night, she stood in the open supply yard. The wind rolled across the concrete, dry and cutting. She didn't speak. Not to herself, not to the sky. The emblem wasn't just memory. It was proof. Her phone still held the message. 8 words, no signature. Truth builds momentum. Let it gather. Be patient. Across the hallway, laughter echoed from the barracks. Someone had replayed the Grease video again. Not loud, but loud enough. She heard her name in the quiet. She didn't react. The ink on her arm wasn't supposed to be seen. But by them, not here. It wasn't a tattoo. It was a code, and that code belonged to a story no one at Fort Dalton had clearance for. The last time she used that number, the one that replied tonight, she had still been on assignment. No unit. Patches. No nameplates. It's just orders. They called it Phoenix Variant. The name sounded polished, safe. But what it really meant, Evelyn couldn't explain to anyone. It had started over a year ago, in a stretch of unstable land near the edge of the Anbar. Triangle. No borders. No rules. The kind of place satellites didn't bother with. 7 were chosen. Pulled from different branches, Navy, Army, Marines. 1 from Intel. No connections. No questions asked. The mission? Extract a political journalist who had exposed war crimes in 3 countries. The man had nowhere left to hide. The task was considered a suicide run? Odds of success? Under 10%? Still, Evelyn volunteered. Not for medals, not for pride. Just because someone had to do it right. They landed at night. No markings on the aircraft. No sound. They moved fast. 12 hours on foot to the target zone. Not a single mistake. The asset was there, alive. Terrified, they turned to head south. Evac was waiting. Then came the ambush. Gunfire rained down. RPGs lit up the night. It wasn't a mistake. Someone had sold them out. Evelyn remembered how Dawson fell first, then Monroe, then Lee. Barnes looked her in the eye right before he died. They both knew the enemy had their schedule. In seconds, 6 elite operators were dead. Only Evelyn and the journalists were left, trapped behind broken walls while the city burned. Her options? Run and survive, or fight through hell. She chose hell for 3 hours. She pushed through rubble, dragging a man who couldn't walk. Her cums were fried, ammo low, weapons empty. She stole what she could, picked from the fallen. At dawn, she reached the evac zone. A chopper hovered above the smoke. She shoved the journalist in and waved them off. He tried to pull her up. She refused. The area was still hot. If they stayed even seconds longer, they'd all be lost. So she stayed, took position on a roof, held a rifle with bleeding hands, covered the exit until they were gone. 4 days later, she walked into friendly territory. Barely alive, the debrief lasted 6 hours. No emotions, just facts. Then came silence. The whole thing was locked down. Tier 6 clearance, black archive, no media, no report, no names. And Evelyn. They rewrote her record. Critical errors in Syria. Negligence under fire? Sounded believable. It had to. They needed a scapegoat. Something the public could swallow. She had no family clothes. No political pull. No one would ask questions. So they buried her, transferred her to Fort Dalton. No medals, no explanations. Just a new badge and a record stained with lies. She didn't fight it. Speaking out meant exposing others. She never asked to be noticed. But now the base was watching. Not with curiosity, with tension. The silence around her was changing. Evelyn didn't speak more. She didn't fight louder. But something in her stillness had begun to shift the room. The ink on her arm wasn't just being remembered, it was starting to be feared. Because buried truth, once disturbed, doesn't go back to sleep. Asterisk that afternoon. Evelyn was assigned to help process new inventory. 2 crates of encrypted field radios had arrived. She worked fast, as always. But one private decided to test. Her, he dropped a radio intentionally. Careful, he said with a grin. Wouldn't want you to freeze again. Evelyn looked down, saw the cracked casing. Shh. She picked it up, noted the serial number, and reported the damage. Nothing more. The insult didn't matter, but the private's patch did. Signals intelligence, that. Same division had once trained her for Phoenix variant. No one from that team should be stationed at Fort Dalton, not by accident. Later that night, Evelyn waited until the base had gone still. She returned to the warehouse alone. She moved to the bottom drawer of an old locker. Inside were tech manuals and tagged field reports. Another map, this one labeled Exercise Valkyrie. Same geometric shapes, same angled phoenix in the top corner. 3 different maps, 3 different sources. Same symbol, none of them acknowledged in base command logs. The ink on her arm wasn't just personal now, it was evidence. She printed a copy of the second map, folded it into an envelope. No name, no explanation. Just one sentence. They forgot what this meant. I haven't. She dropped it in the secure courier bin. She didn't know who would see it, but someone needed to. Across the base, Lieutenant Kessler sat staring at a screen. He wasn't cleared for what he was looking at. He knew that. But the request had just come through Old Phoenix. Drone flight logs. One name wasn't on the request. Evelyn Shaw. But her emblem was blurry. Attached to a photo taken 18 months ago. Next to it, Tier 6 asset confirmed. Kessler leaned back. Whatever this was, it hadn't started with Evelyn, and it definitely wasn't over. The morning began like any other. Heat, dust, orders scribbled late. Rumors faster than radio signals. Fort Dalton moved in patterns. But today, something shifted. General Victor Langston arrived. Unscheduled. No warning, no parade. Langston wasn't a man who needed announcements. His presence spoke louder than any horn. He didn't bring aides, didn't carry a clipboard. He walked straight through the motor pool, questioning logs. He stepped into barracks, noticed mismatched gear, wrong rifle tags. He wasn't here for show. He was here to find what others missed. The warehouse wasn't even on the inspection list, which is exactly why he went there. Evelyn was inside, stacking field packs. She sensed him before she saw him. Tall, silent, watching from the doorway. She didn't turn right away. Langston stepped closer, studied her movements. Precise. Clean. No wasted motion. Then she reached upward. Her sleeve slid back for just a second. Langston froze. The tattoo. Black. Ink. Harsh lines. Phoenix, not made of wings, but symmetry. Cold and designed. He had seen it once before, not on a soldier, on a classified mission brief that required triple clearance to even view. His voice broke the silence. "Where did you get that mark?" Evelyn turned, posture snapping to full attention. Stance wasn't supply line. It was sharp. Battle dash tested, she didn't hesitate. Tier 6, Phoenix variant. 7 went in, 1 came out. The words landed like a hammer. Langston didn't blink. "Lieutenant Kessler," called out. Across the yard, Kessler turned and ran to the warehouse. "I want her full file," Langston said. "Not the surface." 1. The Black Archive. Kessler's eyes widened. "Yes, sir." We took off, heart pounding. Within minutes, the air shifted. Whispers spread, not about Evelyn. About him. About Langston. People stopped what they were doing. They gathered, not speaking. Just watching, by the time Kessler returned with a sealed black folder. Over 30 soldiers stood outside the bay doors. Langston opened it, flipped through. Each page no reaction. When he finished, he looked up, then he stepped outside. "Sergeant Shaw," he called. Evelyn stepped forward. Grease still faint on her sleeves. Shoulders squared. Langston turned to the crowd. "This soldier," he said. Voice firm. They thought they buried her with rumors. They thought silence meant guilt. But Evelyn's silence was never surrender. It was survival. And now, with the world watching, it was justice. Not the kind that comes with parades. The kind that shows up with receipts, records, and a general who doesn't blink. Fort Dalton had built its culture on forgetting. But today, forgetting was no longer an option. That night, Fort Dalton didn't sleep. Crisis meetings started before dinner. Command tried damage control, but nothing worked. The video Evelyn, soaked in grease, mocked by grinning soldiers, was speaking louder than any statement. The emblem on her arm, once dismissed, was now everywhere. Veteran groups demanded answers. Watchdog agencies launched reviews, and a congressional oversight hearing was scheduled in less than 48 hours. But Evelyn, she didn't want revenge. She didn't ask for medals. She just wanted the weight gone, and now. Finally, it was lifting. That night, she stood near the motor pool, shadows stretching long behind her. Langston walked up beside her. He didn't speak. Right away when he did, his voice was low. "I read the full report." "What you did? I've never seen anything like it." She didn't answer, not because she didn't care, because there was nothing left to prove. He asked quietly, "But you still believe in the uniform?" She looked at him. "I believe in the people it's supposed to protect." Langston nodded. "Then let's start protecting them right back." Inside command, Kessler sat alone at a table. He wasn't writing a report. He was writing an apology. Not for press. No. For Evelyn, he hadn't known everything. But he'd known enough to speak up. And he hadn't. That would change by morning. Fort Dalton was different. Orders suspended. Investigations launched. But the bigger shift wasn't official. It was personal. Soldiers who once looked away now looked differently, not out of shame, but respect. 3 weeks later, Evelyn stood straight. In a secure briefing room, no reporters, no cameras, no speeches, just truth. Langston read the citation himself. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Sergeant First Class Evelyn Shaw displayed extraordinary courage under hostile fire. Her actions during Operation Phoenix Variant prevented the collapse of a diplomatic corridor and saved lives. He placed 2 medals on the table, one, the Defense Superior Service Medal, the other, the Bronze Star with Valor. Evelyn accepted them silently, her hands steady. There was no applause. No crowd outside, just a few high-clearance officials and one young officer in the back. Lieutenant James Kessler. After the room cleared, Kessler approached her. Uniform pressed, voice unsteady, "Sergeant," he said, "I owe you more than an apology." She didn't respond. She waited. "I saw what they did, and I stayed quiet," he admitted. "I should have asked more. Questioned the story." He swallowed hard. "If you want it on record, I'll accept disciplinary review. I failed. As an officer, and as a man." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Apology accepted, Lieutenant." Her voice was calm, even no bitterness, just something deeper. Then she added, "Remember this, though. It's not about who apologizes loudest. It's about who protects the quietest." Kessler didn't answer right away, but something in him straightened, not lighter, just clearer. The next day, SOCOM made an offer, reassignment. Same clearance, same rank, even command authority. She declined. "I'm not needed there," she said simply. Langston raised an eyebrow. "Then where are you needed, Shaw?" She met his eyes. "I want to work with the ones who come back broken and the ones they forget." 2 months later, deep in a forest outside Colorado Springs, Evelyn unlocked the side door of a cabin. Plain. One story. No signs, no schedule. Inside. 5 rooms, 3 for sleeping, 1 for counseling, and 1 for silence. It didn't look like a recovery center, that was the point. It wasn't built for the broken. It was built for the forgotten. She didn't run group sessions, didn't hand out quotes or lectures. She just listened. And when they couldn't talk, she waited. Some visitors didn't use names. Some never even took off their boots, but they stayed a night, a week. However long it took to breathe again. One evening, as the sun dipped low, a new arrival stood at the porch. Young, early 20s, eyes uncertain, back straight, shoulders tense. Evelyn opened the door. The woman hesitated. "You're her, aren't you?" "Evelyn's." The voice was soft. "I've been a few people." The woman stepped inside. "I read what happened, ... or what leaked. I think I need someone who knows what it's like being believed by no one." Evelyn rolled up her sleeve. The ink was still there, black, sharp, silent. She didn't explain it. She didn't need. 2 weeks passed. Then months. The cabin filled. Emptied. Filled again. Some days Evelyn taught hand to hand. Other days she just walked the trails beside those who hadn't spoken in days. No headlines. No press. But the work? It was real then. One day, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a single coin, etched with a phoenix on one side, on the other. Silent Emblem Initiative. The Department of Defense had launched it quietly, re-examining. Black ops that left good soldiers erased. Files reopened. Records corrected. Evelyn's tattoo, once used against her, was now a symbol of resilience. Other vets started stepping forward. Some had coins, or some had patches. All had stories hidden under clearance codes. They didn't talk much, but when they met online or in person, no words were needed, just quiet recognition. Not every hero wants their name in lights. Some carry their story in silence. A tattoo, a scar, a lesson learned too late. Evelyn Shaw never asked to be remembered. But the ones who had forgotten her were now rewriting history. One file at a time. She didn't speak in interviews. She didn't demand justice. She built something quieter, something stronger. Because some missions don't end with a bang. They begin with a whisper. Lieutenant James Kessler, now promoted to captain, stood inside an auditorium at Fort Bragg. He was in charge of a new training module. One that didn't exist before Evelyn's story broke. The seats were filled with cadets. Young, sharp, ready to prove something. They expected rules, protocol, strategy drills. Instead, Kessler began with a single sentence. "This course exists because we failed." The room went still. He didn't talk about Phoenix variant directly. It was still classified, but he spoke about choices, about assumptions, about the cost of staying silent when it mattered most. "She told me something once," he said. "Character doesn't show up when people clap, shows up when no one's watching." He didn't say her name. Evelyn had asked him not to, but her story was written in every slide he showed, every lesson plan. Back at Fort Dalton, she never returned. Not physically, but the place remembered her. The new commanding officer installed a true, anonymous complaint line. Disciplinary action couldn't move forward without peer review. And one day, Corporal Hale, who used to be the loudest among her critics, sent a letter. It was short. "I called you a failure," he wrote. "When you were carrying something I didn't even try to understand. I won't ask forgiveness. I just want you to know your silence taught me more than I ever deserved." Evelyn didn't reply, but she kept the letter. Not for emotion. For evidence, proof that people could still change. One snowy night, after the center had gone quiet, Evelyn sat near the outdoor fire pit. The trees whispered softly around her. Her phone buzzed. A message from Langston. "Congressional panel meets next month. Justice reform hearings. Your testimony could change things. Will you speak?" She stared at the screen, then typed, "Let the reform speak. Serve better from the shadows." She stood, stretched, began her usual walk around the perimeter. Not from fear, from habit. Some soldiers forget how to stop protecting. The stars above were sharp and clear. The ink on her forearm caught a sliver of moonlight. For just a second, the lines looked like they were moving. Alive, breathing, waiting. A soft crunch of gravel behind her. It was the young ranger from earlier. The one who had arrived weeks ago with tired eyes and a tight grip. She held out 2 cups of coffee. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Me neither," Evelyn replied. They sat quietly beside the last few glowing embers. No fanfare. No big moment. Just presence. Tomorrow would bring new names, new wounds, more shadows needing something solid. But tonight, Evelyn Shaw was exactly where she needed to be. In the quiet, in the dark. Where the real work gets done, where broken becomes whole, where forgotten becomes seen.